Welcome to the show. Watch UAP Truth 33. I'm John. I'm your host. Today, man, I want to get into this St. Francis of Assisi. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him or the things that happened to him that kind of catapulted him into becoming a saint. Um, he had a experience with a divine being. It was on Mount Laverna. Um, this was in 1224. And basically, and then he suffered what they called stigmata, which to those of you that ain't familiar with Catholicism or any of this, and don't worry, I'm not taking this down a religious narrative, so to speak, in as much as how it comports with the modern UFO phenomenon and how some of these encounters from our distant past, if those same encounters would have happened in today's era, it would be considered uh, to some an abduction or an experience, with a UFO or non-human intelligence. So we're going to drill down into this, and I think you're going to be interested because it really kind of makes sense, kind of completes the picture here. And in doing this, I hope that maybe we'll gain some further understanding of not only the past, but what's happening today and possibly the future. So please stay tuned. I got a hell of a show for you. Be right back. So I should have elaborated on the stigmata, but so the stigmata is people would experience this, and they would have wounds on their hands and their feet, um, like Christ, you know. And Saint Francis of Assisi, he had this experience, and it was stated that the angel was rough with him, right? If in the translation, I believe it was in Latin, and nobody really, it wasn't descriptive of how this angel was rough with him, right? But he definitely suffered wounds. Um, the wounds caused him immense suffering over the years. And not only that, but the witnesses to that event, because there was a lot of witnesses to that event, said that this mountain, there was extreme bright flashes of light that was going on for hours. It was like radiating beams of light, a lot of activity that these witnesses claimed when this happened to him. And not only did he suffer from the wounds, right? And I don't know if the wounds were actually to his hands and his feet. I think that they may have um, altered this story to kind of comport with religious theology at the time. But he suffered immensely. But not only did he suffer, but he also had a shift in his spirituality, his consciousness, and this also comports with a lot of experiencers who have experiences. They tend to kind of like how Chris Bledsoe, um, they seem to kind of grow spiritually, right? They kind of change the way that they live their life, and I think this is important, you know. And it didn't only happen with Saint Francis of Assisi, but this has happened throughout history. I mean, you look at the Travis Walton case, right? And I don't know if any of you guys know who Travis Walton is, but I believe he was a lumberjack, right? I think he was a logger. Maybe it was after work. I'm not sure, but they saw this UFO. It was in a predominantly wooded location. For whatever reason, Travis, this guy runs to the thing, right? And apparently, he was struck down by some type of energy, and his friends left him. You know, they were scared to death, terrified. They took off. Now, I may be getting this, some of these details may not be word for word. So please, again, don't come for me in the comments as I'm doing this off the top of my head. I'm just kind of, I'm winging it, right? But he was taken aboard this craft, and he reported seeing, the prototypical grays, and that they were like working on him, and he actually attacked them. He actually was able to knock one of them down. You know, Travis Walton was a big, strong guy. You know, at the time of this, you know, and he also reported seeing human like beings. There was people that looked like us on the ship, and this is a. I'm telling you, it sounds crazy, but you hear this narrative a lot. Um, a lot of abductees report this, seeing humans on the ship with these ETs. And later on, it was pretty much, after a few days, he called, I believe, family or friends, and he had this crazy story about what had happened. And he's been interviewed on Joe Rogan. Get into it more. I want you guys to watch this clip. Um, I think it's important. May kind of complete this picture, this narrative I'm trying to show you guys. So I'll be right back.
You're logging. You're in the woods. Tell me what happened.
Well, it's just, when you're done working hard physical labor, everybody's kind of jacked up, and there was a whole lot of chatter in the car. We're just talking away, it's starting to get dark. We just loaded up our equipment. We're headed out. And I looked up ahead, and I saw this kind of glow coming through the trees. First, I thought, no big deal. It was deer hunting season. Thought maybe there was some hunters camped up on the hill up there. Maybe light shining through a tent. It was still something really strange, kind of caught my eye. And one by one, the other guys in the crew started looking, but nobody said, "Oh my God, what's that?" or anything like that. It was just kind of an idle curiosity at first. But when we burst into the clearing where we could see the source of this glow, it was just, whoa, it was just mind-blowing instantly.
Kind of goes back to the witnesses of the contact St. Francis of Assisi had with the six-winged seraphim. They seen a lot of lights. Get back to it.
I inexplicably got out of the truck and ran toward this thing, but I thought it was just going to take off, be gone in a flash. And
so, when you say in the clearing, so are you driving on a dirt road?
Yeah, it's a dirt road. Trees are real thick. This was a part of the contract we hadn't cut in yet, so trees were a lot thicker there, except for this clearing, and we weren't the only ones that saw it. We found out later. Sheriff had on file people who were in the area that saw it, hunters and fishermen over there at Black Canyon Lake. And the movement that they described was what the crew described when it left. Of course, I didn't see that. But
what did they describe?
They described this glow rising up and streaking off, I believe they said, toward the northeast. There were some people that probably don't want to be public about it, but there was one guy who was just deer hunting, and he worked in military intelligence, and he stuck by what he and his wife saw. They were both together. And another guy that was at Black Canyon Lake, I won't mention any of those guys' names unless they chose to, but found out later that there was more official investigation that nobody talked about at the time. Immediately, though, this was all nonsense, and these guys murdered him, and even my oldest brother, he didn't believe me. He thought they had killed me. What we were doing with the brush that we cut was piling it up. There were piles that were in the clearing so that the Forest Service could burn these piles, when the conditions were right, where it wouldn't spread, wet conditions otherwise, but burn up this excess material to reduce the fire danger in the woods. And my oldest brother was tearing those piles apart. He was certain that my body was under there. And there were some pretty testy confrontations between him and my brother. And I think even my other brother, Dwayne, he initially took that approach, but he quickly became sure that they were telling the truth.
Now, what do you remember when you were going through your mind and you're trying? I mean, this is a story you've told so many times, and this is a story that's been turned into a film, which it's got to be very surreal. But when you look into your memories and you try to go back to that day,
Well, I don't try. It's something I try to block out, but it's unforgettable. And there's
what do you remember seeing when you ran into the clearing?
well, the whole clearing was lit up with this weird glow. It's really hard to for any artist or movie to try to duplicate the strange glow there was there. Made everything look really, really pretty eerie, you know. And
Did it have a color to it?
it was kind of a golden color, but with a kind of a softness to it that was. It wasn't like beams of light shooting out. It was just this haze of light.
And did it seem to come from a specific part of the craft, or?
Most of the surface seemed to be glowing. There were darker areas that didn't give off light, but it was the parts that weren't glowing. It wasn't so hard, bright that you couldn't look at it, but it had a metallic look to it.
So what did the craft itself look like?
It was a classic disc-shaped craft. The years later, there was a report. I can never remember names, but this guy was saying that he worked at Area 51, and they had something in there. He worked with the Tester Model Corporation to create a model of what he was describing, and that's actually the closest of any of the other descriptions I've seen. But I don't think these things have just one type of craft. I think there's many, many different shapes.
What makes you think that?
Well, personal experience. I try not to emphasize these other incidents, but I've seen the glowing sphere. I've seen the giant black triangle. Other craft that were a ball of light that you couldn't penetrate the light with your eyes. But
The thing about Travis Walton in this experience, he's kept the same story for years, right? This happened in the 70s. This same story, there was actually a movie made. I think it was Fire in the Sky, or right? That the belief is that he was hit with some type of radiation. That's what struck him down, and that these beings took him on board of that ship in order uh, to help him recover, to heal whatever it was that injured him, and that's pretty much what he believes and what others believe. Okay, and when you look at this in the frame of Saint Francis of Assisi, Saint Francis, he ended up dying after a couple of years, and he suffered immensely from these wounds, and a lot of it sounds like what we would believe today to be radiation, injuries from radiation, burns, sickness, this type of thing. And I think we need to really, it's almost like each experiencer has an experience that's tailored specifically for them, and that it both so blah, it both overwhelms and transforms. Um, Oftentimes it's seen as like a spiritual awakening. Their whole personality seems to change, and this has actually caused some people's marriages to dissolve, because they're just not the same anymore. Something has changed. Some fundamental aspect of them has transformed, and I see this a lot with a lot of these cases that I look into, and I also can relate a little bit. I think that prior to my fascination with this subject and um, reporting on this subject and researching this subject and some of the strange, um, some of the strange things that I've experienced. Now, again, I've never seen an alien face to face, nothing like that. But just, it seems like when you really start digging into this and you do it with an open mind and you really want to know the truth and you're really seeking the truth and at the same time you're open to whatever kind of input comes your way, you do start noticing things, synchronicities, deja vu, dreams that tend to come true. Not only that, but you start developing more of a altruistic way of viewing the world and the people around you. And I think that this, could change a person's core identity, right? And if they're in a marriage and they're in love or whatever, and then something along these lines happen, this paradigm shifting experience or something like that happens, I could see how it would possibly change the way people interact. People who have possibly been together for years, and it could harm relationships. Um, so I think that this is definitely a thing, right? And you look like biblical eras, like it was angels and charioteers, but today it's more UFOs, you know, alien beings, things of this nature. But I think that we may be dealing with the same phenomenon, right? And I think that it kind of coincides with the culture's ideation of what this experience would be, right? So if somebody came and said, "Look, I had this experience, and this is what happened. I saw these beams of light. You know, uh, I lost time. I received messages. I had visions, or you know." We would equate that with a UFO, with alien abduction, with this type of phenomenon. Where in centuries past, this would be some type of celestial event, or not celestial event, but like divine beings. This would be angels, and this would be or demons. This whatever our narrative of the time is, whatever belief system that is prevalent in our society at the time, this phenomenon tends to take that appearance. Or maybe that's just how we perceive it, right? I just wanted to bring this up, and these are the various experiences that biblical characters had. Ezekiel, his vision was wheels within wheels, which kind of comports with the classic craft imagery, and then Elijah's ascension. For those of you who ain't familiar with that, like Elijah was, he never died. He was actually taken up into heaven on a chariot of fire, which kind of, you know, I don't know. I've never actually heard of anyone that was actually witness to have been aside from Travis Walton. Um, but I don't think that they actually saw him being lifted up into the craft. I think they took off, and then like Moses, that the burning bush and the cloud, the fire, the thunder, and this actually kind of comports with Saint Francis of Assisi, uh, his encounter with this six-winged seraphim and what these witnesses saw, these lights, which Travis Walton also claims that they saw when they first came into the clearing and saw the UFO. So you see a lot of these, and then like Paul, in his vision. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the New Testament, but Paul used to be he was a vicious um, persecutor of Christians for the Romans, and he was on the road to Damascus, and he had this vision, and it was like blinding light, a voice from above, and he actually lost sight for a period of time. So these are some of the experiences in the Bible that you would think, like in today's day and age, if these experiences were conveyed to you from somebody like just the average Joe, you would automatically come to the conclusion of some type of UFO experience, right? Yeah, I think that's important that we look at this, right? Because I do believe that these ancient religious experiences, these accounts of ancient gods, I think that this has a lot to do with today's UFO phenomenon. And that we've become so materialistic in our thinking that we just discount all this. And I think that we're reaching a point in history where, with the advances in quantum physics and the advances in quantum computing and AI and this whole idea of like a simulation theory that, and then a lot of people scoff at that and think I'm talking about the movie The Matrix, and I'm not. What I'm saying is, we're really limited by our five senses, and how much reality that we can actually interface with, right? And I believe that we're missing so much of the greater picture, and we're so um materialistic that we discount anything that we can't perceive. And I feel like that's a very, very self-centered kind of conceited idea, you know. And then you look at these other I got this other I did actually decided to have Copilot help me out a little bit here. And it's like a comparison between St. Francis of Assisi and Travis Walton's experience, and Solitude, he was a remote forest lumberjack, and St. Francis of Assisi, you know, I believe was a monk, radiant being, seraphim or whatever, uh, you know. But Travis, he experienced these humanoid beings, which I'm not saying that they were angelic. For all we know, they were demonic. I don't know. The fact that he saw humans on board the craft was very interesting. And then, like light being energy, they were both kind of injured by this whatever this energy was. Um, and look, maybe it wasn't the same exact experience, but it's a comparison. And I think that is something that we need to look at. And St. Francis of Assisi, his injuries were automatically labeled a stigmata. But you got to look at that day and age, the church, Catholicism, you know, and they put a religious bent on that account, that experience. Um, and the spiritual shift, deeper devotion, prophetic mission, and Walton had this existential questioning, and the witnesses, you know, monks, later biographers, disciples, scribes, and Travis Walton, his logging crew, his friends, his brothers. So yeah, I just wanted to show you guys that, man, just to give you a overview of how I'm looking at this, right? And it's just a theory. It's just a theory. It doesn't necessarily mean anything unless you choose to believe it. It's my opinion that I think that there's a lot of coinciding threads that we should look at. And I think this is important going forward, you know. What's it going to be next? 50 years, 100 years from now, really makes you wonder. And even now, with the advent of quantum computing and AI, some people think that this is time traveling AI or something, or you know, some of the theories are crazy. And I'm not discounting it, because I think it's possible. Like if at any point they would invent the ability to send even uh, particles or photons or something back in time, that then they would be able to influence the past society with, you know, could be lights in the sky, could be light beings or whatever. We don't really know, and I'm really getting into the weeds right now. I want to recap, right? I want to backpedal a little bit about this, right? So if if a future society would develop the technology to even be able to send back high amounts of energy or light or photons or particles, and they wanted to influence the past society. Okay, say in the future it's this dystopia where some type of nuclear exchange has happened and the world sky is scorched. Things are just totally messed up, right? But they had this technology. Wouldn't they go try to send back messages or signals or signs to tell the past civilization to try to warn them, look, stop playing with this technology, stop playing with these types of weapons? Wouldn't they do that? And it brings you back to the Malmstrom uh, incident, in Montana with Bob Solis. For those of you that ain't familiar with that, anyway, Malmstrom it was a Air Force base where they held silos of nuclear missiles. And in 1967, I believe, Bob Solis, he was like the commanding officer at this place. And anyway, he has reported over the years, for quite a long time that a UFO came and hovered over the base and shut down 10 of the nukes, right? Totally took them offline. And Robert Hastings actually wrote a great book called UFOs and Nukes, where he not only cites that case, but many others, many, many others. So this has been going on for a long time. And I believe as recently as 2011, 2012, I believe there was a case where this happened. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? You know, maybe it's not ETs, that are trying to warn us off of these weapons. Could it possibly be that, in some future timeline, some type of catastrophic, you know, conflict happens that involve nuclear weapons, and possibly are they sending back cryptic messages, warnings to us to abandon these weapons? I mean, look, it sounds far fetched right now, but I mean, just think 10 years, you're 100 years ago. If you were to show somebody a cell phone, that would be pretty far fetched and crazy too, right? Um, just this, me communicating with you guys through this platform. If we would show that to somebody, 100, even man, even in the 40s, they would think that this possibly could never come about, and yet here we are. So look, don't discount it just because it's um kind of beyond our ability to comprehend in today's world, right? It's something to think about. But I mean, I digress. Like I said, I'm in the weeds a little bit. This episode was really about thinking about Saint Francis of Assisi, his experience with this six-winged seraphim that came down and treated him harshly and caused these injuries to him that were then um, narrated, and the story was kind of told as stigmata, and he ended up suffering and ended up becoming a saint. And then you look at that, you know, and you parallel that with Travis Walton, or even go back further. Let's think about Ezekiel and the wheel, right? So Ezekiel in the Bible, he said he's seen these wheels upon wheels in the sky, and these were to him they were angels, and there was like eyes and stuff, and just a really strange looking object in the sky that today we would assume was a UFO, but back then it was angels. You know, what do you guys think of this? Um, and you can do your own research, right? Look into these things because these aren't the only couple cases. This is uh, you could read Jacques Vallée. I mean, he writes a book about this very subject. Um, and I'm not trying to go all ancient aliens on it, but it's something that we need to look at. So, I hope you enjoyed today's show. I mean, quick show. Just wanted to drop something on you guys. Get something to help you guys start thinking, start processing the ideas of this, and start really thinking about what this phenomenon is. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe. Share it. Share it to a friend. Share it to two friends. See you tomorrow. Peace.